Today, we're delving into a darker, yet important, aspect of human history. This journey is not for the faint of heart, as we'll be exploring some of the most severe methods of punishment and coercion ever devised. Understanding these historical practices is crucial, not to glorify them, but to learn from our past and ensure such cruelty is never repeated. It's a sobering reminder of what humanity is capable of, and why we must always strive for justice and compassion. Our first method is the brazen bull. Legend says this was a hollow bronze statue shaped like a bull, designed in ancient Greece. A person was placed inside, and a fire was lit underneath, heating the metal until it was scorching hot. The acoustics of the bull were supposedly designed to convert the person's cries into the sound of a bellowing bull. Next, we have scaphism, also known as the boats. This ancient Persian method involved placing an individual between two narrow boats, or in a hollowed-out tree trunk. They were force-fed milk and honey, and more of the mixture was poured over their body. This attracted insects, which would then consume the person over a prolonged period. The rack is one of the most infamous methods from medieval Europe. It was a wooden frame with rollers at each end. The victim's hands and feet were tied to the rollers, which were then turned, slowly stretching the person's body. This would dislocate joints and cause immense pain, often resulting in permanent injury. Then there was impalement, a horrific method used by various cultures, most notably by Vlad the Impaler. In 15th century, it involved piercing a person with a long, sharp stake. The stake was often inserted in a way that avoided immediate damage to vital organs, prolonging the suffering for days. The Iron Maiden is another notorious device, though its historical use as a torture method is debated by many scholars. It was a tall iron cabinet, often with a hinged front, shaped like a human figure. The inside was lined with sharp spikes. When the doors were closed, the spikes would pierce the person inside, but were supposedly positioned to avoid vital organs, again prolonging the ordeal. Let's talk about linki, often called death by 1,000 cuts. This was a form of execution used in China from roughly the 10th century until it was banned in 1905 in Bulbit. Methodical removal of portions of the body over an extended period. It was reserved for what were considered the most heinous crimes. Moving on to the Judas cradle. This device was a pyramid-shaped seat. The person was hoisted above it by ropes and then slowly lowered onto the sharp point of the pyramid. The pressure and pain were extreme, and the device was rarely cleaned, leading to a high risk of severe infection. The pear of anguish was a pear-shaped instrument with segmented metal pedals. These pedals could be spread apart by turning a key at the base. It was a device designed to inflict internal damage and was used as a tool of punishment and coercion. Another method was flaying, the removal of a person's skin. This practice dates back to ancient times, with records of it in the Neo-Assyrian Empire. It was an excruciatingly painful process, and survival was virtually impossible due to shock, blood loss, and infection. The Spanish donkey, or wooden horse, was a triangular wooden device with a sharp ridge at the top. The individual was forced to sit astride this ridge. Much like riding a horse, weights were often added to their feet to increase the pressure and the agonizing pain on the body. Next, we have drawing and quartering, a statutory penalty in England for men convicted of high treason. The process was brutal. The condemned was fastened to a wooden frame and dragged by a horse to the place of execution. Then, they were subjected to a series of punishments before being divided into 4 parts. The breaking wheel, or Catherine wheel, was a large, wooden, spoked wheel. The person was tied to it, and their limbs were struck with a club or iron cudgel, breaking their bones. Sometimes, they were then left on the wheel to perish, exposed to the elements. Rat torture is another grim method with several variations. One version, described in popular culture and some historical accounts, involved placing a cage with one open side against the person's body. A rat was placed inside, and heat was applied to the other side of the cage, forcing the panicked rat to gnaw its way through the person's flesh to escape. Another ancient and cruel method was keel-hauling, a punishment used by pirates and in some navies. A sailor was tied to a rope that looped beneath a vessel. They were then thrown overboard and dragged under the ship's keel, which was often covered in sharp barnacles. The process could cause severe lacerations and drowning. The scavenger's daughter, also known as the scaventon's gyves, was an instrument of compression. Invented in the Tower of London, it was a metal apron that curled the body into a tight, forced fetal position, compressing the chest and causing immense pressure and cramps. The thumbscrew was a simple yet effective device. The person's thumbs, or sometimes fingers and toes, were placed in a vise, which was then slowly tightened. This crushed the digits, causing incredible pain. It was a common tool for extracting confessions. Waterboarding, a form of water torture, has a long and controversial history. The person is immobilized, and cloth is placed over their face. Water is then poured over the cloth, simulating the sensation of drowning. It induces a powerful panic reflex and is a form of severe psychological and physical torment. Gibbeting was a post-mortem punishment, where the body of an executed person was placed in a human-shaped metal cage and hung up in a public place. It served as a grim warning to others. While the person was already deceased, the public display of their remains was a form of psychological torment for the community. Next is cement juice, a method associated with organized crime. The victim's feet were placed in a bucket or block, which was then filled with wet cement. Once it hardened, the person was thrown into a body of water. The weight of the cement made escape impossible. Finally, we have white torture, a form of psychological pressure that relies on sensory deprivation and isolation. The person is held in a cell that is entirely white. Their clothes are white, the food is white, and the guards are silent and dressed in white. The complete lack of sensory stimuli can lead to a loss of identity and hallucinations. This has been a difficult but necessary look into the darker chapters of our history. These methods, born from a lack of understanding and compassion, serve as a stark reminder of the progress we've made in human rights and the importance of upholding justice and dignity for all. Let's remember these lessons so that we may continue to build a more humane future. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration of history meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. See you next time.